Sharmin Narwani is the oracle for me of events in the broader Middle East and indeed farther afield. She's a columnist at the Cradle, although that only tells half the story. Good a story though it is. Sharmin Narwani, welcome to the mother of all talk shows. Been a while since we saw you on here. Very glad to have you back. I called it whack-a-mole earlier. The whole world is fixated on whether the Ukraine war is going to come to an end, perhaps very, very soon. But the danger of a new Middle East war has suddenly loomed into an almost certainty. The events in Lebanon and the open statement being made by Netanyahu that his greater Israel dream he intends to achieve, and that they're not finished with Iran, and that a new war, perhaps by the end of August, certainly by December, can be expected. What's going on here?
You know, I always like to say on the Cradles podcast, and this is a repeated refrain by me, is that Netanyahu and the Israeli establishment, the extreme wing Israeli establishment, has to be kinetic at all times. Otherwise, his government collapses. Otherwise, Netanyahu's trials, for corruption, etc., continue. Otherwise, Netanyahu's coalition government falls apart. So I think the thing to watch is simply this. The Israelis have to be kinetic. And this is something we're seeing by the Americans as well. You know, they're not acting like victors. They're not acting like the ones who are sitting in the driving seat. They're racing so far ahead and so quickly, almost to create an illusion of victory and everything, going their way. If they were, in fact, in the driving seat, they wouldn't have to put out statements and trying to get media headlines every single day. So the answer to this is Netanyahu has to be kinetic. The U.S., again, failing empire, has to be kinetic. If they stop, everything collapses. I see it as a very, very weak position, to be honest. Yes, for Netanyahu's government, coalition government, war with Iran, war with Lebanon, the continued occupation of Syria, finishing the genocide and the ethnic cleansing of Gaza, those things must continue. But his limits don't stop there. There's Iraq, there's Yemen, there's Somaliland, the Horn of Africa, where so many global players are moving into, controlling the new corridors, the new sea routes, the new passageways for transportation that is going to define the geoeconomics that is going to define this century for the global community.
Yes, the rhetoric is one thing, though, and we always have to keep reminding ourselves that Israel is composed of fewer than 9 million people. It's composed at the moment of less people than it has been for a very considerable time, certainly since the fall of the Soviet Union, because so many Israelis have fled. I can tell you that for sure, because everywhere I go, they're turning up as tourists or as exiles in unprecedented numbers. Some of them are pretending to open Moroccan restaurants, even though if you look at their website, it's clear they're Israeli websites. The Israelis who can are voting with their feet out of the country. They have a 10,000 soldier deficit for the declared, although now truncated, mission in Gaza, merely to reconquer Gaza City rather than to occupy the whole of Gaza. Their soldiers are not turning up for their reserve duty. Thousands of them are wounded or sick. A very large number of them have been killed. And the bitterness inside Israeli society is reaching fever pitch, as these demonstrations every Saturday night make clear. So is this just not all big talk by Netanyahu? can he really walk the walk?
This is it. I mean, the ones who are talking big on the global stage are, I think, the ones who are really worried about their position. You're actually right, George. Israel has been hemorrhaging its military capabilities since the beginning, but basically October 7th, 2023. I think the late Secretary General of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, pointed out a few months later that Israel would be out of arms entirely by now if it wasn't for, multiple U.S. and Western European shipments of weapons every single day, sometimes multiple times a day. I agree with you wholeheartedly that the Israeli army, in terms of manpower, is really struggling. This is a country of 9 million people at best. As you said, many who have either left, immigrated, meaning permanently, or have stayed out for duration because they have that option. They have a second passport for the duration of conflict. But worse yet, they cannot get the Orthodox Jewish community, the Haredim. There's a big civil conflict in Israel over the conscription of Orthodox Jews there, the Haredim. So they can't get that there. They have a massive number, more than anything, of Israeli soldiers who are being treated for PTSD. They expect that bill for treating these soldiers over the coming years to be in the billions and billions of dollars. So the army chief, the chief of staff of the Israeli occupation forces, Zamir, has said, and screamed at Netanyahu in recent cabinet meetings that we cannot do this. We cannot go in and occupy Gaza. The Israelis got out of Gaza in 2005 for a reason. They could not maintain that occupation. And yet this is still the same government with depleted forces, manpower, and a pariah image globally, thinks that they can secure their positions, their occupation of Syria, they can secure their positions in southern Lebanon. They can keep attacking Yemen. They can do this in Gaza. And by the way, the ethnic cleansing of the West Bank is only just starting as well. I have to say, just remind our viewers of something that the founding head of state of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, always spoke that this country, this colonial state of his, could only sustain short, hard wars, that a long war, would collapse Israel. And this has been a military doctrine that has been there since the founding of the state. Never, ever have they gone into a protracted war. And this time, they're breaking with every single one of their military doctrines, their principles. And I'm telling you, and I think Israelis realize this full well, that Netanyahu has to keep kinetic, otherwise his coalition falls. But with his current activities and the way he's going forward, he's going to pull down the entire state of Israel, not just his coalition, in my view.
Mussolini used to go around the world threatening people with Hitler's army. Essentially, Netanyahu is threatening people with America's army. When he says, as he did yesterday, that there's hundreds of kilograms of highly enriched uranium still at large in Iran, and that they are going to take it out, he knows that Iran is more than capable of handling Israel. So that whole boast is as a precondition, requiring American kinetic involvement. At the same time, they say they weren't happy with Trump's level of commitment during the 12-day war. And they may even have had to use the Epstein card in order to get him to be as committed as he was. So is this just braggadocio, or are they really going to start a war with Iran before the end of the year?
There are many Iran observers and, supporters of the Iranian government who would like to see that war happen. I have to be honest, George. We know that Iran, in its first Operation True Promise and its second one, and even its third one, the 12-day war, as we call it now, Iran didn't go the whole way. Iran continue to do what it has been forever, exercising strategic patience and bringing the temperature incrementally to message to the enemy, okay, do you want us to go here? Do you want us to go there? In the end, Iran, for the first time, used a hypersonic missile in battle. So that was when everything stopped. You know, when the Israelis went racing to the Americans and said, "Okay, we need to stop this right now." The next time, you know, Iranians I'm listening to are saying that the next time the Iranians will start with that level of messaging, right? I mean, actually, they'll go past messaging the most point. I don't think Israel, a sliver of a state, has the chance of survival if all of its security, military, intelligence, operational infrastructure is hit. And that's something they can do, the Iranians can do in one day with a single barrage of missiles. You know, with 100 missiles, you can take out Israel's military targets. And then with another 100, you can take out all of its critical infrastructure, you know, desalination plants, its gas fields, et cetera. We're talking about, you know, a very tiny piece of geography that has zero geographic depth compared to Iran, that is a massive country with, you know, a lot of geographic depth and a lot of terrain that armies can never cross, you know. So it is a lot of bravado, but I fear that in their heads, okay, in the bubble that Netanyahu lives in and even Trump lives in, and it really is a bubble, that they may go ahead. And that's a danger for the whole world, you know. But I always caution our viewers at the cradle that Trump has only been, it's not even 8 months, right, that he's been president. He has a good 3+ years to go. The man has an attention span issue. He doesn't actually have a lot of depth. He doesn't go into the weeds on issues. What are his principal goals is, you know, I mean, to win, to look good, to make money. And there are many ways to craft this, but war is not one of them. Wars in which the U.S. is just basically handing out billions of dollars a day is not the solution for Trump. So now, after all the threats he lobbed against the Russians and Vladimir Putin, et cetera, in the last, you know, 2 months or so, suddenly there's a discussion. The Americans, Trump spoke to Putin for 2 hours. He made it sound like, okay, I get it. Instead of Putin crying uncle, in effect, it was Trump. They're going to meet. Everyone's going to try to spoil that meeting. To be honest, you know, and we're talking about West Asia, but I think a lot of people in this region are looking at what's going to happen in Alaska in 2 days to see, because, you know, as usual, people living in frantic times think frantically and worry, for instance, that, okay, maybe Putin will exchange a valuable geopolitical card in order to get the war in Ukraine to stop. And what could that card be? Could it be over Armenia or Azerbaijan? Could it be over Iran? You know, do you know what I mean? It's sort of like relationships in this region. Could it be over oil prices? Will Putin give something away? But I personally think Putin is in the victor's seat right now. I mean, he's going to go he has gone from strength to strength in Ukraine. He's continuing to show that, and will do until the very last minute in Alaska. And you know, I don't think that there's much he has to give. You know, the Russians have always, I think, never veered from their agenda for peace. Okay, they've never changed their basic principles, their foundational, you know, asks. And I think you know, Trump will have to give. But everyone's watching these talks because West Asia, being the geographic bridge between Europe and Asia, you know, where so many competitions are taking place economically and politically, is always everyone's mailbox. It's where the messages are sent to each other, you know, between great powers. It's unfortunate, but I think this is a very important meeting for the region. I do think that if, you know, Viktor Orban, the Hungarian prime minister, said it perfectly, you know, we've been reading about how Zelensky's been calling everyone in Europe to see, you know, can I get in there? You know, I want to meet with Trump. I have something to say. Can you twist his arm? He's just not invited to Alaska. And Orban said, If you're not at the negotiating table, then you're on the menu. And this is what Zelensky fears more than anything. But for us, watching this happen in Ukraine is very interesting, because if Zelensky's an easy sideline, okay, he does the deal with the Russians and Europe just has to suck it up, okay, or go to war themselves, then couldn't that happen with Netanyahu, who is definitely becoming a thorn in the side of the Americans? He just asks and asks and asks, and then tries to push. Trump has already experienced this in within 6-7 months of being president. Tried to be dragged into a war with Iran. And the Israelis realized Trump really meant it when he said, "I'm one and done," And so I think seeing Zelensky sidelined for the White House to go in directly with its adversaries and sort of strike a deal and put an end to a war essentially will have great ramifications in this region. Netanyahu could be next. I think U.S. allies will also be, put on guard, that they can't sort of stretch their list of demands too much. There's a lot happening, George, as well as I do, and you really do. The situation globally is so fluid right now. There's almost no way to predict anything.
We're not going to go out of business anytime soon, Charmaine. Those of us who are involved in analysing it all, and there's nobody analyses it better than you. Thanks very much for being with us on the mother of all talk shows once again.